Welcome back, fellow gamers. I want to talk to you today about Planeswalker cards in Magic the Gathering, and more specifically, how to use them. So I'm going to run down exactly what most of the card means. I won't touch on the name or the mana cost. That's covered in a earlier video where I just talk about the basics of a Magic the Gathering card. So for those aspects, or for any other basic aspects of an MTG card, please refer to that video. This here is really just, if you've opened your Planeswalker and you don't know how to use it, what to do, I will explain that for you. So, breaking down the way this would come into the battlefield is the way I'm going to go by it. So, when you pay the mana cost and you put it down onto the battlefield, you're going to notice here the number 3. That means that's the amount of loyalty counters that the Planeswalker will come in by, and that's the how you measure the, you can call it the life total of this like Planeswalker, but in reality, the thematic aspect of it is that you are calling on this Planeswalker to help you in battle, and depending on what the count is, that is how loyal, and that's why it's called loyalty counters, is to you. So as soon as it reaches 0 or under, let's say, that Planeswalker is no longer loyal to your cause and decides to Planeswalk away and get the heck out of the battlefield. So that is what that number is for. Now you might be asking, okay, what do I do with these loyalty counters? Well, that's a good question. So the loyalty counters actually are based off of these abilities to the left here that run across. So a +1 ability means that you put a loyalty counter on the card and then you do the ability here. The ability can only be done on a sorcery speed, so that means anytime that you're not during combat, you're not in another person's turn, you are not during your upkeep or stuff like that. So we always call it sorcery speed because sorceries can only be played at certain intervals within a turn. Now there are other cards that may allow you to do other things at different times, so you might be able to play an ability when you normally wouldn't be able to. That's, we start getting into corner cases here. We're just keeping it simple for this video. And if ever you come across one of those cards that does that, then you can go ahead and try to manipulate the game as you see fit. Now, the minus abilities here indicate that you'd be removing counters. So, as a reminder, you can only play one ability per turn, and you can only pay something if you actually have it. So, she comes down with 3 loyalty counters. You wouldn't be able to do her -7 right away. You would have to wait until you got to 7 or higher to do it. And if she was directly at 7 and you did it, so you'd get the ability and then the card would go to your graveyard. So because she reaches 0, she is now done for, she's done her job essentially. Now, if you were to tick her up to 8, 9, 10, wherever, and then you use her -7, she does stay on the battlefield. So that's something to really pay attention to. Now, Planeswalkers are identified by the Planeswalker type, and a lot of Planeswalkers will have their name right next to it. The way, or why that is there, is that when Planeswalkers were first introduced, they wanted to prevent something from happening where if you had 2 Planeswalkers that were the same character, they would be identified by the tagline next to Planeswalker, so in this case, Elspeth. What would happen is that if you had one copy of that Planeswalker there, and you played another one, you would then have to decide which one to get rid of, because there is a special Planeswalker uniqueness rule. That rule has since been removed, and now all Planeswalkers are printed with the legendary Planeswalker status. So that means you can have 2 Planeswalkers of the same character out on the battlefield at the same time. That should maybe center that. And having those 2 Planeswalkers out there at the same time really allows for a lot of cool combos and some kind of degenerate shenanigans, but it's pretty fun being able to have 2 characters, 2 cards of the same character out on the battlefield at the same time. So what happens here is that I assume that as these Planeswalkers get printed, they will start including the legendary status. Now, I do believe that the legendary status was created for this card, particularly because one of the abilities here is the -5 ability is you create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace Cunning Castaway, except they're not legendary. So you're able to have those 2 duplicates of this guy out there at the same time. Kind of got around that Planeswalker uniqueness rule by just going ahead and making everybody legendary. So that is what the name identifies. That's why it was on there. Now you could, I don't really see a point to it anymore. I think they're just keeping it there for templating reasons. One thing to note here on this Planeswalker particularly, I'm going to bring him up a bit closer here. He has a 0 ability. So what that means is that you do the ability once, and then at that point, there's no change in the loyalty counters. So you don't take away, you don't add, you just do the ability, and that's your ability for the turn. Now there are some Planeswalkers that do have X. So whether it's plus X or minus X, you determine how much loyalty counters you remove, and then you do that much damage in this case. So again, you cannot remove more loyalty counters than you actually have, so you wouldn't be able to remove, like 20 when you only have 8. So that's something to keep in mind, especially for this type of Planeswalker here. And finally, there are some Planeswalkers that have a tagline ability here where this Planeswalker can be your commander. So if you do play EDH/commander and this Planeswalker has that ability, you can use that in lieu of a legendary creature. So even though these cards now have the legendary subtype or super type, you cannot just use any Planeswalker as a commander unless that changes in the foreseeable future. I don't know. That's going to be up to the rules committee, but for the time being, the only Planeswalkers that can be your commander are the ones that indicate it as a special 4th loyalty ability right there. So there you have it. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you open a Planeswalker, you want to know how to play it, that should cover it. Again, you pay the mana cost, comes out onto the battlefield, you put the amount of loyalty counters equal to the bottom right value. Once per turn, you can use one of the abilities listed as long as the conditions are met that you can pay for the ability. So yes, putting counters on is considered a payment in this aspect. So there shouldn't be a reason that you can't add loyalty counters as a payment unless there's a effect that's on the battlefield preventing you from doing so. But again, that's a corner case. We're not going to really talk about that. So you either add, subtract, or really just enact one of the abilities. Now the abilities themselves, again, are quite diverse amongst all the Planeswalkers. So saying that, let's look at this Liliana one, +1 is up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until the end of your turn. It's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. The cards here are really meant to be understood fairly easily. These are pretty much the draws of Magic the Gathering for newer players. They think these are really cool. I agree, these are cool cards. Understanding how to use them is the most important part. Once the loyalty counters have been used up, you then get rid of the Planeswalker. You can cast another copy of that card. So if you happen to have 2 of Liliana the Last Hope, this one goes off the battlefield, you can cast another one. Or let's say you use the -2 ability, it has 1 left, you can play another Liliana, decide the original one goes out into the graveyard, you can then use this new card's ability another time because it is considered a different permanent and you can use the ability of that permanent once per turn. Fairly simple. If I left anything out, please let me know in the comments below. I would be more than happy to answer your questions with regards to Planeswalkers. And there you have it. Really hope this was some help to you. And until next time, good gaming.